Castor oil penetrates deeper than any other oil. And what castor oil does is it's able to break up any unnatural formations. It'll even break up a bone spur, but it won't break up your bone. So the castor oil comes in and it knows what to break down and what not to break down. I have met ladies who have conquered their breast cancer by wearing castor oil compresses on the breast. One lady said to me, I just wear it 24/7. And you certainly can do that.
Hey everybody, it's Chris, and today I am interviewing Barbara O'Neill. And some of you may be familiar with Barbara. I first came across her online. I want to say it was just a couple years ago. Maybe it was during 2020, but clips of her teaching started populating my feed. I started seeing more and more of her, and I just really loved what she teaches. She is just such a brilliant, down-to-earth teacher. She's a believer. She's just has a lot of experience helping people heal holistically. And she has a background as a nurse. She's from Australia. And I thought it'd be really fun to talk to her and let her share, some of the wisdom that she's acquired over many years of helping people with various chronic diseases, and clarify maybe some confusion about health and wellness and healing. And so, Barbara, it's just great to see you, and I'm excited to dig in.
It's great to be here, Chris.
So you are in Alabama.
I am.
And you work out of a retreat center called Living Springs.
Yes, Living Springs is a health retreat. It's been functioning, I think, for several years now. And often a couple of times a year, they ask me to come in and work as the health director, giving consultations and lectures. And I've been booked out pretty quickly this year, so unfortunately I'm only here for 2 weeks, but often I'm here 2 or 3 times in the year.
Yeah, and obviously, has it been fun to see your reputation grow online?
It has been. In fact, we had a very funny incident yesterday. We're in Roanoke in the car park, and this guy blocked our car, and this lady came running up, screaming, "Are you really Miss Barbara?" And her husband popped up and said, "I told you."
It's great. I know the feeling. It's sweet. It's wonderful. So I'd love for you to tell your backstory, how you got into nutrition, how this became a part of your life as a conventionally trained nurse, I'm assuming, working in the medical field, and what occurred in your life to divert you onto the holistic path.
Well, a couple of things did. I worked as a psychiatric nurse, and I really didn't see people get better. I saw them manage, but I saw the same people come back again and again. And in my mind, I probably was only about 21, 22 then. I thought, this really isn't working. And then I fell in love, and my partner and I decided to have a baby and move to a rainforest. And I started to get really interested in health. And it was probably an experience with my first child that really turned the corner for me. She had an earache over 6 weeks, 4 courses of antibiotics, and they were about to give her the 5th course. So I have felt the frustration of a young mother not wanting to give more drugs, but not knowing what else to do. And so when my next baby had an earache, I didn't go to the doctor. I didn't tell anyone, because you get a lot of pressure. I went to the old lady next door. So I was probably about 26. She was 86. I said, "What did your mother do when you had an earache?" She said, "Boil up an onion on the stove." I did. My son slept for 2 hours, and that was it for me. I was sold. I thought, wow, there is another way. So I began exploring
Wait, before you go further, I've got to know, you boil the onion and then what?
I wrapped it in a cloth and wrapped it on his ear. I actually cut the onion in half, so you're looking at the rings. And I wrapped it to the point where, obviously it wasn't going to hurt him. And he slept for 2 hours. And I think James is 45 now, and he's never had another earache.
That's It's great.
That's
Yeah,
pretty
so
good.
that opened your eyes to a natural remedy.
It did, and I thought there must be more. And so that's when I began to explore. And it was probably only a year after that, another very important thing happened in my life. I began to read the Bible, and I became interested because of some neighbours who were Seventh-day Adventists, and they were, a pivotal part of their beliefs is the body, is looking after the body and treating the body naturally when you get sick rather than going for drug medication. So I look back now and see how God was leading me and working me in my life. So that really opened my eyes. I thought, what does God want? How does God want us to treat our body? So that put another aspect on it.
Yeah, that's it's wonderful. And so you're still working as a nurse, and at some point there was some kind of transition where you started teaching and working with others. How did that
Yeah,
progression happen?
that is true. Well, once I started having babies, I did not work again. And my first babies were only 18 months apart, so I was a busy lady. And then I had a, third and fourth child, and they had different ailments. And so as I treated them, I was learning. I had books on water therapy. I had books on herbs. And it was probably once I'd had 4 children that some of my girlfriends said to me, "You never go to the doctor. What do you do when your children are sick?" And I started to share with them the little bits I did. Some of them laughed. And some of them said, "Oh, in a crisis, I just run to the doctor." And that's when I thought, I could give meetings. I really believe that God prompted me to do that. I just saw there was a lack. Here's the information, but the child is sick. It's joining those two together. And so I started giving meetings. And I used to use my children. I'd wrap them up in poultices and have their feet in hot water in buckets. And I think that was about 1992 when I gave my first set of meetings. And little by little, I guess it grew from there. But then something else happened in my life which really, zoomed things along. And that was, I was a single mother for 4 years. My first husband was a drug addict and an alcoholic. And my daughters went to work at a health retreat. And 6 months after moving there, the manager of the health retreat asked me to marry him. And that was my husband today, Michael O'Neill. And a year after we married, he said, I'm gonna open my own health retreat. And our kids were the staff because my eldest daughter, she could massage. My next daughter could cook. The boys could garden. Michael's daughter was good on the computer. There was his secretary. I said, "Who will be the health director?" He said, "You." I said, "Oh no, I'm just a mother and I just help other mothers." He said, "No, you'll be good." And he walked out of the room. So I became the reluctant health director. And that's when and we married 1997, so that's 1998. And I was so glad. God is so good because I know that all his biddings are his enablings. I've always been very shy and very quiet and would rather be in the background. My husband is not. And the first health retreat we ran, we had 1 guest. I could handle that. And then little by little more came and more came. And as more guests came and the different ailments they had, I'd study up on them. And then I did a nutrition course and became a certified nutritionist. I was also granted, in the grandfather clause, a diploma in naturopathy. And it is not recognised today, but in the 1990s it was. If a person had done, a lot of accepted work and well-known work in the field, they could be granted the grandfather clause. And so I had a diploma in naturopathy and nutrition. And then we just got bigger and bigger and bigger.
There was a point where I'm assuming you got too big and maybe too much attention, and then you had some difficulties with the Australian authorities.
That's certainly true, Chris. And I think the main reason why I became under the eye of the authorities is nothing I had done, because I always say, how can there be a crime if there's no victims? And there's certainly no victims. But my husband in 2016 started a political party. Today it's called HEART. It's Health, Environment, Accountability, Rights and Transparency. And a journalist said to him, Michael, are you prepared to lose all your money, your business, your house, your reputation? Michael said, I am. I'm not 30. And this is an important issue, but what Michael was not prepared for, that they targeted me. And they did. And I spoke at a convention, and the next day, up on the website, the people who are pro-vax put out a call. They said, are there any volunteers? We need to take this woman down. And 3 volunteers came up. I've never met them. They've never been to our retreat, but they went through everything that I'd said and came up with some ludicrous claims, like if you give a baby goat's milk, it could be fatal. These were the claims. And the Healthcare Complaints Commission banned me on these ludicrous claims. My ban is that I have a life ban. I'm forbidden to give any advice in Australia. I am forbidden to speak on health in Australia, or $10,000 fine and 10 years in prison. So, yes, listeners, this is the Australia of today, unfortunately.
That's pretty frightening. And I think a lot of people have no idea that Australia has become, well, we kind of saw what happened during 2020. I think if you're paying attention to how Australia locked down their citizens and the sort of totalitarian approach they had. But to me, yeah, the fact that they would try to take you out and threaten you with these fines and things, and imprisonment too is that a possible ramification of?
Well, it certainly is. This was 2019. 2020, we were all locked down. And so I did Zooms from my mountain home. All around the world I did Zooms. And in 2021, they contacted me again and they said, we notice you're doing Zooms. This is a violation of your prohibition order, final warning, or 3 years in prison. So it's a very real threat. So even though I wasn't talking to anyone in Australia, the fact that I was in Australia.
Well, and you know, to me, I'm thinking, what's the next step, right? They could even come back and say, well, you're an Australian citizen. And if you talk about it anywhere to anyone, we're going to come after you. And
I think they'd have a tough time now, because in the last 6 months, as I'm sure you realise, TikTok and Instagram, it's gone crazy. We have a little bit of a giggle because they tried to ban me in Australia, but the very banning of me seems to have just opened the door worldwide. And I think of Psalm 146 in verse 9, it says, the ways of the wicked God can turn upside down. And, there is a higher power here, and that's who I work for. I work for the higher power.
Yeah, that's right. He uses the foolish things to shame the wise, and he works all things for our good.
That's true.
And so those attacks, and I've been attacked quite a bit myself. Fortunately, I have not had threats from the government as you have, but I've certainly been slandered and attacked on the internet for many years, and for talking about natural health and healing and nutrition and trying to help people survive and thrive through cancer, as I did. And yeah, it's never fun when you are criticized and slandered, and someone has, when a real person has made a deliberate attempt to destroy your reputation, right? That is not a nice feeling. It hurts.
No, it's not a nice feeling. And what has been happening over the last few months is someone's going on Facebook claiming to be me, claiming to be Dr. Barbara O'Neill. And my daughter sent me one yesterday, And it's me talking, but it is not me. It is not my voice. And when you look closely, it is me, but it is not me. I tell you what, that's a strange one. And this person who claims to be me claims to be an expert. Well, that's how you know it's not me. I never claim to be an expert. And I also never push products, which this person was. And I'm also not on Facebook. I've never been on Facebook. I don't even have a Facebook account. So if a person claims to be an expert, claims to be Dr. Barbara O'Neill, you know straight away it's a scam.
Yeah, good. That's good. Good to know, folks. Now, you are on Facebook because you got lots of clips on there that other people have uploaded. So you do have a strong presence there, even though you're not actively using the platform. So it's pretty great, though, right? It's pretty great that people are finding you, even without your own effort, you know. And probably where I first saw you was probably a clip on Facebook, although it might have been Instagram. So, okay, I'd love to talk about health, right? I know it's a broad topic here, but why are so many people suffering from chronic diseases like heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, cancers?
Well, a lot of people are suffering from these diseases because they're suffering from malnutrition. They're not eating food that nourishes the body, from dehydration, from not getting enough sleep, from being exposed to environmental poisons. And like the dripping tap on a stone, these all come in little by little by little. And when we have a look back to some crises on the planet in the 40s, it was the media. It was the media that influenced the Germans to hate the Jews. It was the media that influenced the Hutus to slaughter the Tutsis. And so here we are and I mean, that was 1994. Here we are in 2024, and the same thing is happening. And that's why it's a little bit alarming that people have done a copy of me that's not even me, that are even pushing things that I don't advocate. And I find, and I'm sure you see this too, Chris, that in every case it's different. And that's why I believe that God gave us the right to be our own doctor, because we've all got different histories, different makeups, different DNAs, different childhoods, different exposure to different things. So I always like to look at the history, because that can often tell you, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But when the body cries for help, it cries to us through symptoms. And just as medicine treats symptoms, it masks the symptoms. But when we're looking at healing the body naturally, we hear the symptoms and we try natural remedies, and sometimes the body will say, I like that. And it says that because we get a relief. And if it doesn't quite like it, we adjust until we get something that we like. So I spend a lot of time teaching people, please listen. Please listen to what your body's saying. And that Psalm 146 I just mentioned, in verse 3 it says, put not your trust in princes, neither in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. So who are the princes? They're the authorities. They're the authorities in the field, the authorities in government, the authorities in medicine, the authorities in health. I believe God wants us to question and work it out. And 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, God says, I've not given you the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. See, what a sound mind does is it receives the information and it assesses it. And it's not hard to assess what is in everything today. I'll give you a little illustration. When I was a little girl, everything I wore was cotton. Cotton underwear, cotton socks, cotton dresses, and a woolen jumper when it got cold. But today, look at the fabrics, and many fabrics have been created in a chemical laboratory, and our skin has millions of little pores. And so putting these chemical fabrics on the skin, that's another way that the chemicals are getting into our body, causing an imbalance in our endocrine system, an imbalance in our lymphatic system and imbalance in so many areas of our body. So what you ask, Chris, is a huge question. And I know that you realize that because there's so many things. And then on top of all that, we've got the mental aspect that, our mind plays a huge role. And I know in the Aboriginal culture, you may have heard, you may not have heard, that traditionally if someone was worthy of death, the bone was pointed at them and they would die within 24 hours. Now, there's nothing about this bone. It's just that they believed they would die, and so they would. And we see it in some ways today when a doctor says to a patient, you have cancer, you will be dead in 3 months, and often they die exactly at 3 months. So if someone tells me they've been told that, I say to them, have you rejected that? That's the first thing. Please reject that. Put not your trust in princes. They may not be right. Work it out. Weigh up the pros and cons. It's not hard to do that today with Google. You can look at the side effects of every medication. You can have a look at what these long names mean. Take a magnifying glass everywhere you go. Everything you buy, what's in it? What's in it? Because in 1 Corinthians 3:16 and 17, God says, know you not that ye are the temple of God? And the Spirit of God dwelleth in you. If any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy. For the temple of God is holy, which temple ye are. Many people are defiling their bodies and not knowing that they are. They don't realize that these fabrics are little by little killing them. They don't realize that that sunscreen is full of chemicals. They don't realize that that broccoli that looks so green and nice is actually full of chemicals. We need to investigate and find out, what are we putting into our body? And if you have defiled your body with things that you didn't realize were poisons, there's some good news. In Acts chapter 17 verse 30, God says he winks at our ignorance. Okay, you can't be held accountable if you did not know. But as I say to our guests, sorry, you now know. You now know it's time to investigate. It's time not to trust the princes, the authorities. Listen to them, but examine what they say. Does this make sense? I mean, that's what a sound mind does. It says, what is this? What's the result of this? Where did this come from? Will this harm my body, or will this help my body? And that's, I believe, the God-given right of each one of us is that I am the master of my destiny. I am the one that chooses what I do, what I don't do. And if someone says to me, but Barbara, I love the refined sugar, I'm just going to eat it. My response to that is, okay, it's your God-given right. Because it is. I'm sorry that you've chosen that. And if you want me to tell you, I will tell you what will happen. But if you don't want me to tell you, I respect your choice. And that is what God wants each one of us to do, is to respect each choice. But also he wants us to find out what is in this. So when I broke my hand 9 weeks ago and the ambulance came, the ambulance officer jumped out of the ambulance with something green. I said, what's that? What's in that? I wanted to know what was happening. And then, of course, it's, yes, I will have that. No, thank you. I won't have that. It's our God-given right.
I love it so much. We have the same message. And it's that message of personal responsibility, the message that you reap what you sow. And, you're responsible for the knowledge that you have. And you are responsible, it says in Proverbs, to gain wisdom and knowledge, right? To gain it, to seek it out.
Yeah.
Because it's more valuable than pearls and precious stones.
Yeah, it's true.
And I would just say most people are not seeking wisdom and knowledge, right? They may be seeking knowledge. They might like learning new things or being told how things are or being told what to think. But wisdom comes when you simply put, when you consider all opinions, right? When
That
you
is true.
consider two opinions that are conflicting, and you have to rationalize and sort this out and then read more and research more and draw your own conclusion about a thing, right? About a matter. Now you are practicing wisdom. And I
That's
love that
true.
you quoted 2 Timothy, because that was the first verse that I shared with my community in March 2020,
Yes.
because I saw the fear mongering was just ramping up. It was, no one really knew what was happening, but it was just fear, fear, fear. And in the cancer world, fear is palpable, and it is
Yeah.
often used as a weapon against patients. It's used to coerce them and manipulate them into saying yes to treatments that they don't understand, that can be incredibly harmful and not beneficial, not curative. And so I saw that playbook being executed on this global scale. And so the very first email I sent, addressing this was, listen, you have not been given a spirit of fear, right? This is not from God. Fear is not from God. You can't make a good decision when you're in a state of fear. You need to be aware of what's happening. This is fear mongering. And the sound mind is the rational mind,
That's right.
right? You have power over your life and your thoughts and your choices. And you have a sound mind when sometimes we don't, right? It's easy to get into an irrational state, but God has given us a sound mind. And when we step back and say, wait a second, I need to think this through rationally. I need to read and research. I need to educate myself and not just believe everything I'm told. So I just love, this is one of the reasons I wanted to interview, because I just know we have the same heart for people and are sharing the same encouraging message to people, that you do have to take control of your life and your health, and that your choices have consequences, right?
That's
Whether
true.
you realized it or not.
That's true. That's true. And fear is an emotion, but what's opposite to that emotion is faith. And I'd like to
Yes.
suggest that the medical system today is really built on fear, and it's built on a theory that we evolved. And because we evolved, we can't heal. And so a drug is necessary to bring this about. I don't think doctors lie. I think most doctors are ethical, but the pharmaceutical is not, and it uses a lot of deception. Whereas God's method of healing is based on faith. Faith in an incredible body that was created to heal itself. And also God gave us herbs which can work with the body to bring about a healing condition or to boost healing. It works with the body. And that's the truth. So these two, as far as the East is from the West almost, these two systems, and we have a choice. And faith is not something you see. So when my arm was in plaster or half plaster for 6 weeks, I had faith that my hand would use again, that I could use my hand. And only 2 weeks ago, I could only bend it that much. Whoa, I can bend it right down there. But when I could only bend it this much, I had faith that the day would come when I could do that. And the Bible says in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, faith is the substance of things hoped for. It's the evidence of things not seen. If you can see it, it's not faith. God's method of healing requires faith. And it's not hard to have faith in the mighty God who is able, was it Ephesians 3:20, able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think. So when I look at those two systems, I know the one I want to choose, and it's God's system, the system of faith, that is the system of truth.
It's good. It's a good word. So I'd like to talk. I'd like to ask you specifically about cancer and some of the things that you teach in regard to cancer, causes of cancer, nutritional approach to cancer, maybe herbs and different remedies and therapies that you've found to be especially helpful for cancer patients.
Cancer's a particularly interesting one. It's of interest to me because I always want to know the cause. And sadly, in medicine today, that's not often assessed because there is always a cause. Newton's third law of motion states to every action there's an equal and an opposite reaction. There's always a cause. So in every case, it can be different. But what I have found in cases of endocrine cancers, so that would be in women breast cancer, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, cervical cancer, and in men that would be testicular cancer, prostate cancer, there is always a hormone factor. And Dr. John Lee, I think it was back in the 1980s, he's the first doctor that really blew the whistle on this hormonal imbalance. You see, it was caused by the contraceptive pill. And I know I was on the pill when in the 70s. All my girlfriends were on the pill. No one ever blinked. No one ever thought anything about it. No one ever questioned. We put too much trust in the princes. And unfortunately, that contraceptive pill has caused so many problems. And if a woman's on the pill and gives birth to a woman or man-child, both of them are born with a slight hormonal imbalance, but some more than others. So that's one aspect that's rarely addressed, is the role of hormones. But it was probably about 15 years ago the Australian Health Department stated that estrogen is a known human carcinogen. You see, estrogen causes cell proliferation, and that's what the pill does. It causes a rise in estrogen and a drop in progesterone. And progesterone, called mother hormone, that's the hormone that's designed to keep all of the others under control. So men and women with these cancers in the reproductive organs, the balancing of the hormones is essential. I have many books in my library at home by different people who have conquered cancer. Some of them, like yourself, Chris, some of them are professors, some of them scientists, some of us nutritionists, some of them oncologists. So I look at the common denominators, and I've found 3 common denominators with cancer, and that is cancer loves an acid environment. And so when people come to us to want help to conquer cancer, we look at alkalizing. And I'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. The second common denominator is cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen. And so increasing oxygen content in the cell makes it difficult for cancer to survive. And the third one is that cancer thrives with high glucose. In fact, cancer cells consume 15 times the glucose of any other cell. And so this cancer cell that thrives where there's no oxygen and lots of glucose, Professor Otto Warburg in 1946 got a Nobel Prize for discovering that. So a lady said to me, Barbara, you'll be excited to know that they're doing tests on cancer, finding it can't survive when there's lots of oxygen and it consumes high amounts of glucose. I said, it's good to hear that, but did you know in 1946, Dr. Otto Warburg got a Nobel Prize for discovering that? So it just shows that this is not new, and what I present is not new, but that's what we target. So looking at the alkaline environment, so encouraging an alkaline environment in the body because cancer loves the acid environment, that can be influenced by foods, it can be influenced by green drinks. When you drink those green drinks, they have a wonderful effect of alkalizing the tissue, and because they are very high in the alkaline minerals. And one treatment that we've been giving our guests, and I got this off a Canadian doctor, very controversial though. My husband even stopped doing it for a while because of the attacks we were getting. It's sodium bicarbonate wraps. You see, Dr. Tullio Simoncini, he was an Italian oncologist. He was injecting sodium bicarbonate straight into cancer and just seeing the cancer shrink, because sodium bicarbonate is probably the ultimate alkalizer. Anyway, that poor doctor, I think he's in jail now on a charge of manslaughter. The pharmaceutical company can't patent sodium bicarb, can it? Apparently, one of his patients died. My husband said if only he'd injected them with chemotherapy, he would not be in jail on a charge of manslaughter. And so we wrap people up in these sodium bicarbonate wraps. I was unaware of this happening, but I demonstrated it for a doctor in New Zealand, and he filmed it and put it up on YouTube. So you can Google my name and sodium bicarbonate wraps, and it shows you how to do it. So that's alkalizing from the outside, alkalizing from the inside with the green drinks and a more alkaline diet. So looking at oxygen, we have 2 hyperbaric chambers in our health retreat in Australia. And so when people come to us wanting help with cancer, they may have hyperbaric chambers. Some might have them every day. And a hyperbaric chamber is oxygen being forced into the body under pressure. Henry's law states that more oxygen goes into liquid when it's under pressure. So that's the reasoning behind it. The other way you can help to oxygenate your body is through a special little device. It's our own air purifier, and it's called nose. And in Genesis 2 verse 7, the Bible says, "And God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. He became a living soul." Beautiful verse. Where did God breathe? He breathed into the only place we should be taking our air in and out, which is nose. And there's a book called Breath by James Nestor, who really expands on that principle. Best-selling book, interesting book. So that's the oxygen. And
And deep breathing, we should say deep breathing is a practice
yes,
to
Chris,
increase oxygen.
I call it God's LSD, long, slow, deep. Yes, the abdominal muscles were designed to aid in the breathing process. So nose breathing, long, slow, and deep. That alone can have a powerful effect at increasing the oxygen content in your body. And then the third one
just something, sorry to interrupt, but just something as simple as sitting quietly or laying down and taking 30 deep breaths is such an underrated practice and a wonderful practice to do daily, is even just that simple thing.
It is, and ideally near an open window.
Fresh air.
Also, address the air that you're breathing. And also, cancer consumes 15 times the glucose, so get those glucose levels down, 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 down. We've even found that what's effective is that the people who are wanting to conquer cancer have no fruit, not even fruit for 6 weeks. So they eat a lot of vegetables, legumes, nuts and seeds. We look at aiming for half raw, half cooked. At our health retreat, our guests do 2 days on juices to begin with. If they are conquering cancer, we really reduce the fruit juices and do mainly vegetable juices. Carrot juices are well known and has been for centuries, been used to conquer cancer. And so they are the basic things that we look at when someone comes to us wanting to conquer cancer. It has been claimed that I claim to be able to cure cancer, but I cannot cure anyone. The body and the body alone is the effective healer. And there are many ways of healing and only one that God approves of, and it's the one that he put into the human body to heal itself when given the right conditions. And I have seen, and I believe God blesses it. He puts his blessing when we work with the body he gave us and those natural healing powers.
That's wonderful. Well, we have a little bit of a different philosophy on fruit. I didn't have any limitation on fruit, and I've seen a lot of people recover, including fruit, but I do understand the rationale behind limiting it. And, it's just, there's different approaches. And
that is true, Chris. And also, it's only 6 weeks. Only 6 weeks, then some fruit can come in.
But focusing on the whole food nutrition is really key. And carrot juice was a huge part of my healing strategy. Yeah. Giant salads, tons of vegetables, all raw, lots of carrot juices and vegetable juices. and fresh fruit. But I was eating so much. I was drinking so much carrot juice and eating so many vegetables that I wasn't eating a whole lot of fruit because I just wasn't that hungry, So, but okay, so what about some ancillary therapies in addition to diet, like castor oil packs?
That's true. That's a excellent therapy, and we've seen many people use that effectively. Castor oil penetrates deeper than any other oil. And what castor oil does is it's able to break up any unnatural formations. It'll even break up a bone spur, but it won't break up your bone. And Psalm 104 verse 14, the Bible says God gave herbs for the service of man. And medicine calls it synergism. So the castor oil comes in and it knows what to break down and what not to break down. And I have met ladies who have conquered their breast cancer by wearing castor oil compresses on the breast. One lady said to me, I just wear it 24/7. And you certainly can do that. And also we have seen it help with cancers in other areas, also brain cancer, to apply it. It's a little bit hard to wear a compress on the brain, but you can rub it in. It's a sticky oil. And one lady said she's got a little woolen beanie and she just devotes that to putting it over when she's rubbed that castor oil in, and it will penetrate. It takes a bit longer because it's such a thick oil, but it is a very effective one. But prostate cancer, how would someone apply castor oil in prostate cancer? Well, there's a very clever way that you can do it. The area that's closest to the prostate on the outside of the body is between the scrotum and the anus, so very hard to apply a poultice there. But if you melt some coconut oil and mix it with castor oil, so you've got 50-50, and put it in the refrigerator so it goes solid, and make a little suppository about the size of your little finger, and before bed, then it's inserted into the anus. Now the colon wall, first of all, where the colon wall first is in the body, that's very close to the prostate. And so the man inserts the suppository, the coconut oil melts, the castor oil can move across and affect the prostate that way. And we found that very helpful.
That's really interesting. I've never heard of that method before, and it does make sense. So you mentioned Dr. Simoncini, and he has a book called Cancer is a Fungus. And I'm curious as to your thoughts on the microbial connection to cancer, viruses, bacteria, and fungus, and how much of a role do you believe they play in cancers?
I believe that they certainly can play a role. And his book, Cancer is a Fungus, a very interesting one. And there's also Professor Constantini, who's former head of the World Health Organization. He also came to the same conclusion that fungus or mold played a role in cancers. And when you have a look at what cancer thrives on, no oxygen, high glucose, acid environment, that's exactly what mold or fungus thrives on. High glucose, acid environment, low oxygen. And I'm not saying that all cancers are caused by fungus, but it certainly does play a role. And I have seen so many people with cancer, and when I look at their history, there's been some mold exposure. One lady said that her ceiling's always got black mold on it, and she had inflammatory breast cancer. Yes, there was a hormonal part. Yes, there was a dietary part, but there was also a mold part. And my book, Self-Heal by Design, actually looks at the history of mold or fungus in disease, and also the link between cancer and fungus.
Well, and to speak to that a little bit more, bacteria also, many bacteria like anaerobic bacteria like a low oxygen environment, and they use sugar for fuel, glucose for fuel, and invade cells and take over cell machinery reprogram cells to divide uncontrollably, and looks a lot like cancer.
That's absolutely true. But what I always, we don't want to be presenting something like Day of the Triffids, the plants are overtaking us. They only survive where the environment is right. So if you create an environment, in fact, I said to one man, we're creating an environment in your body where it can't survive because we've reduced the glucose, we're flooding it with alkaline substances and lots of oxygen. It just can't survive. And Doug Kaufman, he wrote a book with Dr. Holland called The Germ That Causes Cancer. And Dr. Holland said, you deprive cancer cells of glucose, they self-destruct. And another aspect, which I'm sure you found, Chris, was nutrition. So many foods today are lacking nutrition. It's a very interesting book called The Calcium Lie by Dr. Robert Thompson. And this is a doctor who was about to get out of medicine because his patients weren't getting better. But it takes a long time to become a doctor. So we decided to look at nutrition, and he said his eyes were opened. And he shows that 50 years ago there was twice as much nutrients, basically minerals in the soil, as there is today. So the only foods really that contain the nutrients our body needs would be the organic foods.
Yeah, there's a number of studies that show organic food having higher nutritional content, higher vitamin and mineral content. And also you're avoiding the herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, and the biosludge fertilizers that the big agricultural industry producers are allowed to use if they grow conventionally. So it just makes a lot of sense to eat as much organic as possible. And I certainly did that. I went all organic when I had cancer, and we still eat predominantly all organic.
There's been many studies done over the years, especially on minerals, and how you feed the rats high nutrition, the cancer goes. But the rats that aren't on the high nutrition, the cancer thrives. There are many studies. Dr. Colin Campbell, in his book China Study, he touches on it. And it really does make sense, because we are all exposed to mold spores. We're exposed to environmental poisons, even when we choose not to be. I'm sure every time I fly, I am. But I have endeavoured to create in my body an environment where they're not going to go for, because there's nothing to feed them. I keep to the basic laws of health. I make sure I go to bed early every night. I drink lots of water. I eat nourishing food. I'm running up and down hills every morning. So I am giving to my body everything that I know that it needs to be able to live on planet Earth in 2020.
Exercise should be mentioned as another depriver of glucose.
It's the most powerful way to oxygenate your body. But especially ladies, I say to them, watch what you're wearing. Men wear cotton shirts, cotton undershirts, cotton underpants, cotton jeans, but the ladies that like the pretty things, these chemical fabrics, they're disrupting the hormones, they are contributing factors to cancer. So I make sure I've got my woolen jacket on, I've got my silk scarf on, that what's touching my body is natural fibre. And again, take your magnifying glass. And if you think it's going to cost a fortune, go to the thrift store. You can get some quite nice things there, but take your magnifying glass.
It's hard if you're a fashionista, because so many clothes are made with polyester and synthetic fabrics. It's hard.
What I say to people, we the consumer have power. So we have 11 ladies here at Living Springs at the moment, and their eyes have been opened. And they say, Barbara, you always dress so beautifully. I said, I must. You have to look at me for 2 hours. But I go to great lengths to only wear natural fibre, and you can. Now, if everyone stops buying polyester and everyone starts buying cotton and silk, and by the way, rayon, viscose and modal, they are all made out of wood pulp, so they're considered natural fibres. We can change the market. If we stop buying these chemical fabrics, the producers will soon see they've got to put their production where the money lies, which is the natural fibres.
And there's hemp and bamboo fiber products too.
That's right. That's right. And there's a great company called Boody, Boody, and all their underwear. They have sports clothes, leggings, petticoats. It's all bamboo, which is visco. I think there's about 2% elastine, and that's just to give it a bit of elastic. So, ladies, you might go into a bra shop and there might only be two makes of bra that are cotton. Well, if everyone goes and buys those cotton bras, the producer will soon see he's got to get more of them in.
Well, I'd love to ask you, we've got a few minutes left. I'd love to ask you, what does every cancer patient need to know? Like, what are the first things that you teach someone who comes to you with cancer? Besides, obviously, we've covered a lot already of sort of basics, but in terms of their mindset and their attitude and faith, what are the kind of things that you feel compelled to communicate to them, to encourage them, to get them thinking correctly about their life and their disease and all of it?
What I always do is I give a few stories from people who have conquered cancer to show them that it is a possibility. And some people that come, I think they got a good chance. They're young, and if they do everything right, they'll conquer this. And they don't. And then someone else will come, maybe they're a little bit older and the cancer's very advanced, and I think, this will be touch and go. And a year later, I get an email, my cancer is gone. So it is a possibility that cancer can be conquered. And the first place to start really is in your house. Make sure your house is healthy. Make sure it's clean. Make sure there's no mold. Start drinking more water. Start going to bed a little bit earlier. We just start with the simple things and start buying organic food. And just little by little start to change around. And ideally find a health retreat. Another one I know that has an excellent cancer program is Eden Valley in Denver, Colorado. And I know that they do fever baths. That's another treatment. And I know they have a few hyperbaric chambers. And going to a health retreat like that can just kickstart. Because at first it can be overwhelming, very overwhelming. And maybe the person doesn't have the finances. But most people have either a church family or a family around them that may be able to help. And one man sold his truck so his wife could come. So, it's, if possible, I think a health retreat's a great start. And just start where you're at on the little bits and pieces, knowing that God gave us an incredible body with an inbuilt ability to heal itself. And it can heal itself when it's given the right conditions. And also claiming those wonderful promises in the Bible. One I mentioned earlier, Ephesians 3:20. It says, "Under him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us." And that power is God.
That's good. So what does an average day look like for you in terms of breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
Okay, well, I'll tell you my day-to-day. I've only been in the US a week and a half, but I thank God that because I've had my eyes in the sunshine, it's reset my body clock, and I go to bed early so I can get up early, so I can run up and down hills. I try and have at least 3 glasses of water and a little bit of Celtic salt before I have my breakfast, but that might be over an hour and a half. Breakfast this morning, we had some grapefruit, we had some mango, and I had chia gel all over that. I had some pecans. I had some Simple Needs bread. I hope everyone's aware of the Simple Needs bread, that beautiful sourdough gluten-free bread that you can get in nearly every your shops. What do they call Sprout, Whole Food, those sorts of shops. And by the way, that starter that young Tristan uses to make it is my starter from Australia. So I had some Simple Need bread. On top of that, I had some olive oil. extra virgin, of course. I had some nice hot cayenne pepper over that. I had avocado on top of that. And then I had some savoury red lentils on top of that. So my breakfast was a breakfast for a king, and I don't have any hunger for at least 5 hours after that. And I lectured this morning, and I again through the morning are drinking water. But because our guests are fasting today and we're juicing, I was able to have a juice, which I'm very glad of. One of my favourites is 80% carrot, 10% celery, 10% apple. And so then at 1:30 we had lunch. There was quinoa, there was some black beans, there was also a big salad, and there were olives and spring onions and tomato and avocado. And when I put it on my plate, I put some more olive oil on and more Celtic salt, which I like. And I think there was some baked corn, organic corn crisps there to scoop up so it was a bit like a Mexican meal, I suppose. So that was what I had for lunch today. It is now 10 to 5 in the afternoon here in Alabama, and I'm starting to drink my water again. I try not to drink water with meals. I want a nice strong hydrochloric acid to break my food down. Sometimes I have a little something at night. Sometimes I don't have anything. Depends on how big and what time lunch was. If I have something tonight, it'll probably be a little fruit, maybe some chia, maybe a slice of simple needs bread with a little avocado. But if I have anything at night, it will be light. As I said, sometimes I don't. Depends how hard I've worked through the day and how big lunch was. So that's the meals we're having. Tomorrow we'll be eating with the guests, and most of the main meals there are salads, sometimes 2 or 3 different types. We encourage our guests to have 50% salad in their diet, raw food. There might be some sweet potatoes. There'll always be some sort of legume dish. I know last week we had lima beans in a cashew sauce one day, and another day we had I think we had a southern meal. We had beans in a rich tomato sauce, collard greens, and also cornbread. That was a real southern lunch, and always a big salad. So I look at aiming for always some protein with the beans, but I have them many different ways. Always baked or steamed or stir-fried veggies, but always a large salad.
That sounds amazing. I love all those foods you just mentioned, and those are meals that are very similar to the meals that I eat every day. It's wonderful to hear that. So I want to ask you, where can people find you, follow you, connect with you, learn more from you? Like I said at the beginning of this interview, I've really enjoyed watching some of your lectures online. I just love how in depth you go, how obviously you're so well educated, and you have been a health and wellness practitioner, coach, teacher for so long. There's just a lot of wisdom that comes out when you in your videos and lectures. So I appreciate it. I love what you do. So how can people find you and learn more from you?
That's great. Well, before I tell you, I just have to tell you one thing. So in 2019, when I was banned, my husband said, "You're of age, you can retire, or you can lecture overseas." And I answered him without hesitation. I said, "I've never had so much experience. I have never had so much knowledge, and I feel great. I'm still running up and down hills. So I think it'd be wrong to stop. I'll go overseas." And so that's actually how it all began. So where you can find my schedule, I have a website. It's Self Heal by Design. It's the same title as my book, so it's easy to remember. So that's www and endingwith.com. And that will show you my schedule, where I will be. You can also download my lectures from that website. I'm at Living Springs at the moment, and everything I say, Jeffrey is filming. And I know he's one of the first people that started to put little clips up on TikTok. So there's probably going to become a few more little clips, some new clips coming out on TikTok. So that's where you can get the information.
That's great. We will put links to all of those things in the show notes so people can find you and follow you and learn from you and connect with you. Well, Dr. Barbara O'Neill, this has been a real pleasure. I'm a big fan of you, and I love your faith, your commitment to God's word, to helping empower people to heal themselves and make those changes to their life that really do produce and can produce a harvest of health rather than a harvest of disease. So it's been really wonderful.
It's true. And I want to tell you of my favorite email. A 35-year-old girl emailed me last year. She said, Barbara, I watched your lecture on YouTube on conquering cancer, on balancing the hormones. I've been diagnosed with breast cancer. I'm only 35. She said, it's a year later now and I'm cancer-free. I love that email. I had no contact with this woman. All she did was watch and did it. And she got the results. That's why I said it's my favorite email.
Yeah, and those just keep you going, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And that's right. It just keeps you going. And that's why I believe that it would be wrong for me to stop. I live on a beautiful property out in the bush, 450 acres. It will be so easy to just stay there and garden and not be attacked and people not misrepresent me. And you know, we just had got one thing come through and said, Barbara O'Neill has just been executed. Barbara O'Neill's just been kidnapped. And then there are pictures of me, but it's not me. I'm in a leather coat with a ring on my finger. No, that's not me. And so that's what I say. Facebook is not a true representation of me, but the website I gave you. But also my daughter lives in Wisconsin, and she sells my book and she sells various products that we use at Misty Mountain. And her website is Misty Mountain USA. So that's easy to remember. So that's another place where you can get my book.
Good. We'll link to it. Thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate you hanging out with us. And please share this video with people that you care about and help me reach more people with this message of hope that cancer can be healed, that your choices matter, and there's so much you can do to help yourself. And so thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.